they couldn't understand it. Hollywood just completely turned on me, and they wouldn't let me be part of the show anymore. And for 2 years, I couldn't get a job, and I lost everything you could possibly imagine. It was something that was hard to get through, and that's when I had a big drinking problem but really what the struggle of life is truly about is how you dust yourself off and conduct yourself thereafter. That really tells you what kind of man you really are. I remember Clint Eastwood, when I did Flags of Our Fathers, he pulled me aside and he says, "You're lazy." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, you're just a gun for hire." And all of a sudden, Stallone walks around the corner and he's standing there like he's... And I'm like, "Oh, I'm about to be fired." I've never really had God speak to me before, that I could actually hear something. And I felt something in the pool. I don't think I've ever told that part of the story until here I am on the Tim Green show, and I finally let it loose. I didn't see this coming.
First of all, this is my voice. I'm Tim Green, and I have ALS. But this podcast isn't about ALS. I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I don't feel sorry for me. I'm a father of 5, married for over 35 years, a New York Times best-selling author, an NFL first-round pick, and a practicing attorney. This is Nothing Left Unsaid, where my son Troy and I sit down with extraordinary people for raw, honest conversations about life, its toughest trials, and greatest triumphs. My voice in today's episode is powered by 11 Labs. Neal McDonough, you've long been known as the quintessential bad guy, but in The Last Rodeo, which you wrote and starred in, you finally get to play the good guy. It's out in theaters now, and I have to say, I cried through the last 15 minutes. It's a powerful, moving film. My wife Alyssa loved it too, and what a full circle moment after being blackballed for 2 years because you refused to kiss your co-star, losing your home and your cars. Here you are, kissing your co-star at the end of a movie you made. The one thing you never lost through it all was your family and your faith. That makes this moment even more powerful.
Yeah, that pretty much encapsulates my life of the last 10, 12 years. It was, it was very difficult, that's for sure, to go through what I went through. I wouldn't wish it upon anyone. But, as soon as I got through, and it was something that was hard to get through. And, that's when I had a big drinking problem, because I thought drinking might be the only way to just kind of drown my sorrows and kind of, get away from the world. And because no one understood me, I felt no one, could kind of grasp what I was all about and who I was. And I thought that Hollywood just completely turned on me and never wanted to invite me back to the dance again. So it was for something that I'd studied and worked on for so hard through Syracuse, where I went to Syracuse with you, to London Academy, to all the stage and all the movies and TV shows I'd done up to that point, all the hard work that I'd put in. When it all got taken away, it's never easy. Tim, you know full well what it's like to have things taken away from you and the struggles that ensue because of it. But once you dig down deep and you figure out who you really are, and we're here for a finite amount of time on this planet. So while we're here, our job is to work for him. Our job is to keep through the struggles, to stay positive, and know that the end is something that is glorious if we do it correctly. And at that point, when I stopped drinking, and everything, like kind of the clouds parted and everything just kind of opened up because of my wife Reve and the amazing relationship that I have, same relationship that you have with Alyssa. It's the same thing, that once you see the clarity and see what your job is from him, everything becomes much clearer and much more linear in your approach to everything. You don't need certain things. You don't do certain things. Your nose is just straight forward, staring straight at what your goal is. And my goal is to entertain people for him, to give people a chance to see movies that do give glory to him. They can be entertaining. They can be edgy. They can be action-packed. It can be whatever everything you want, instead of just the usual saccharine, sweet, smaller Christian films. We're trying to make, and those were great, don't get me wrong, but I'm trying to make films that the whole family can go, no matter if you're Christian or Jewish or Muslim or Buddhist or Taoist. It doesn't matter. That you go to a movie and feel like you feel a little bit better thereafter. But that time that I went through is what built me to who I am today. If I hadn't gone through that, would I have the success of The Last Rodeo or Homestead or The Shift, these films that Angel Studios and myself and my wife Reve have been working on together. I don't think so. I think sometimes you need to be crucified in life to realize what life is really about. It's about family. It's about God. It's about what you can do to make the world a better place while you're here for that finite amount of time.
Neal, can you go in a little more detail for people that maybe haven't heard the story or don't know about kind of what got you blackballed?
Yeah, it was, I'd always had in my contracts that I wouldn't kiss another woman on screen. And my wife didn't have any problem with it. It was me really who had a problem with it. I was like, yeah, I don't want to put you through it. I know we're going to start having kids, and I don't want to put my kids through it. So I decided that I was going to be the villain du jour and be the best villain on the planet. And I think I kind of achieved that, to an extent of all the films. I can't tell. I was sitting in the makeup chair about a year ago, and I was getting ready for another death scene, as I always do. Uh, and the makeup artist said, guess how many death scenes you've been in? I tallied them up last night. I'm like, oh, I don't know, 25? And she says, no, this is your 63rd. I'm like, that's got to be some kind of record because they're not like small little background extra deaths. They're always these big villain, bad guy deaths, which I'm very, very proud of. And a lot of people say, well, you kill thousands of people in all of your movies, sometimes millions, and you won't kiss another woman on screen. I'm like, yeah, but you're not really killing anybody, and it's kind of funny on the day when we're doing it. But intimacy is a whole different thing for me. So when I wouldn't do it, and they couldn't understand it, Hollywood just completely turned on me, and they wouldn't let me be part of the show anymore. And for 2 years, I couldn't get a job, and I lost everything you could possibly imagine. Not just houses and material things, but your swagger, your cool, who you are, your identity, everything. My identity was an actor, and a really good one. And once you don't have that identity, you're kind of lost in a tailspin. And I was in a big, ugly tailspin for a couple of years. And it still took me a couple of years thereafter to kind of break the habit of, am I really in the show, or is this just kind of a part-time thing? They kind of letting me back in. I'm not so sure. And I drink more. I never drink during the set, never drink during work because I love my craft. I love my craft so stinking much. And I take it with the utmost seriousness in everything that I do. But after work or days off or anything, I'd still feel like I wasn't a man. I didn't feel like that I was doing the right things, or something was just wasn't clicking. And then it was finally Reve saying, you need to go back to church. You need to, because I used to go to church daily, and I kind of would go to church on Sundays, and I'd probably half in the rapper when I go to church on Sundays, and just kind of get through stuff. But then when I stopped drinking, and everything just kind of changed, literally the clouds parted. I was like, oh, I don't need this crutch. Oh, people are calling me. Oh, I am successful. Oh, I do like myself again. Okay, I am God's child and I have a job to do. Stop wallowing in self-pity, dust yourself off and go hit it hard. And ever since that day, I've hit it as hard as possible. And, at 59 years old, I'm more busy than I've ever been in my whole life because I have this clarity, I have a goal, and I have a vision. I have one boss, and it's God, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to make my boss happy.
Why did you refuse to kiss your co-star? And what made it okay for you to break your own rule after all these years?
Well, my wife is really hot. That's the other thing. She's a good-looking woman, and everything else pales compared to my wife Reve. So, but in seriousness, it was just it was just something I was never comfortable doing. And so when I wrote The Last Rodeo, I wrote 3 flashback scenes for my deceased wife, and in one of the scenes, 2 of the scenes, I have to kiss my wife. So I convinced my wife Reve, I'm not doing this movie. And it was financed, it was ready to go, and director's set. And I said, I'm not doing the movie unless you play my wife, because I'm not going to kiss some other woman on screen. And she's like, well, I'm not an actor. I'm like, well, you are now. So let's go. And she was a supermodel. She'd been on stages. She knows the pressure of the spotlight and all that stuff. So when it came, when it was game day, she was so prepared and so ready, and she crushed it. She was so great in the movie. And to kiss my wife, my real life wife, in a movie that I wrote and produced and gave glory to him in, I can't imagine, Tim, anything really better than that in my life when it comes to my career, because it's finally one of those things where, all right, I made it and I did it our way. We did it, and we made a beautiful film that's made money, that everyone's loving, that the reviews are crazy for. I've never been part of a film that has a 95% Rotten Tomatoes approval rating from the audience. Never. So we knew we did something right. And, to walk down the street or go through airports and have people come up to me in tears about the last rodeo is just something that I'm so stinking proud of. And it's hard to put into words how fortunate I feel about my life at this point. And again, you got to go over some speed bumps. You got to get crucified. You got to do certain things to really find the glory at the end of the tunnel. And I think I've gotten there.
Not to keep going back, and it was a dark time for you, but you're on set. They say, "Hey, now we're going to do this scene where you're going to, kiss the co-star," and you just said, "No, it's in my contract." I'm sure they tried to pressure you, and you just stuck to your guns. I mean, did you ever even consider folding at that point?
No, no, no. I remember they came to my trailer, and the wardrobe lady says, "Would you like to be wearing a sock?" Excuse me. "Would you like to be wearing a sock for the scene?" I'm like, "A sock?" And I said to her, I remember, I said, I'm from Cape Cod, and I don't wear socks. I've never worn socks. I'm a loafer and no socks guy." And she's like, "What?" And she closed the door and she walks away. I'm like, that was the oddest question I've ever had in my life. And then 5 minutes later, boom, 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 on my trailer door, there's the producers. And it's like, "You don't understand. We need you to do a simulated sex scene today, and you're just going to have a sock on. You'd be naked." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And so then I pressed them more. I'm like, "That's not what I'm comfortable doing. So why are you pressing me?" And she goes, "We need it for ratings." I'm like, "We're shooting a pilot. The show isn't even out yet. What do you mean ratings? What are you talking about? I'm an actor. I'm not that guy." And they said, "Well, unless you do it, we're going to have to replace you." I'm like, "Well, then replace me, because I'm not going to do it." And they fired me. And I remember flying home from Albuquerque and flying over the desert in New Mexico, and realizing, okay, I just got fired from a TV show. I'd have a better chance of surviving in that desert than surviving when I land in Hollywood. And I was right. And I didn't tell Reve. We're on a hike with two of our little kids at the time, and my lawyer calls me and said, "Okay, so they're suing you. Um, this is not a good thing for you, Neal. You sure you don't want to go back and you know think about it again?" I'm like, "No, I'm not going to think about it again. You know me." He goes, "Well, I figured that. So just know that this is going to be a very painful, costly ordeal, because my agent left it out of the contract." So it was just this awful, ugly time, and it cost me a lot. And would I do it again? You darn right I would. Would I like to go through that pain again? No, I wouldn't. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. No. But if I had to, I would, because I knew I did the right thing for my marriage. I knew I did the right thing for him, and I knew I did the right thing for me. Really, deep down inside, in my gut, I knew I did the right thing. So sometimes pain is the right thing to go through, to make sure that, look, Tim, going through pain, going through adverse things, going through difficult situations in your life, everyone goes through it. Everyone. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter if you're a plumber or if you're an astronaut. You're going to go through some very difficult things in your life. That's what life is about. But really, what the struggle of life is truly about is how you dust yourself up and conduct yourself thereafter. That really tells you what kind of man you really are, or woman you really are, what kind of husband you are, what kind of dad you are, what kind of coworker you are. And I want to be one of those guys that stood tall, did the right thing, and was an example for other people, that if you do the right thing, you might get, kicked to the curb a few times, but you're going to do it the correct way. And at the end, you'll be smiling all the way. And that's where I am at this point.
Yeah, that's awesome. Imagine that wardrobe person when she said, "Do you want to wear a sock?" and you said, "I'll just take loafers."
Oh, she was so befuddled. She was like, "I'm sorry, what did you say?" I'm like, "No." It's like, every time I do her accent, she's like, "You Virginia Doubtfire. Hello, dear. What should you like? Some socks, dear?"
Imagine her reporting that back though. Does he want a
Yeah.
sock or no? No, he said he'll just wear his
No,
loafers.
it's not. Wow, he's wow. Okay, here we go. He's confident. Yeah, I don't think I've ever told that part of the story until here I am on the Tim Green show, and I finally let it loose.
That's
There it is.
awesome.
I love the fact that you never wavered from your principles, and it feeds perfectly into my next question. You're proud of being a committed Catholic. What made you that way? Was it your mom?
Huh? That's a really good question. I think that at a young age, I grew up right across the street when I was a little boy in Dorchester, Massachusetts. I grew up right across the street from St. Peter's Church, and my grandmother would grab me by my ear and bring me to church almost daily. And there was this, not only just for mass, just to sit in church. And I thank my grandmother. She's long since passed, but now I do that when I'm on when I'm on set or I'm on the road. I go to church every single day. You know, a lot of guys would go to other places. I'll sit in the church, and I'll just say thank you for all the gifts that He's given to me. And it's kind of been something that's been part of my life since I was a little boy. And when I was in high school, I was struggling in high school. My freshman year, I got cut from the baseball team, cut from the hockey team, and I was failing all my classes. I mean, I was just an absolute loser my freshman year in high school. And then at the end of my freshman year, I went on this religious retreat. And then all of a sudden, everything changed. And I realized life isn't about me. Life is about Him and what I can do to provide for Him and His children, who happen to be my brothers and sisters, which is everyone on the planet. And before you knew it, I was back to being on the baseball team. I was back to being on the hockey team. I was then I was, by the time I graduated from Barnstable High School on the Cape, I was class president, most popular kid in school, class clown, best actor, scholarships for sports, all these things, because I realized that when I made things about me, I fell on my face. And still to this day, when I do things, choices for just myself, I will fall on my face. But when I make choices that I know are right and for Him and for my family, then everything works out really, really well. So from a young age, God was always there in my life. And, everyone says I'm a devout Catholic. Yeah, I'm a devout Catholic, but I've read every book, from the Torah to the Quran to the Book of Mormon to, everything about Taoism and Buddhism. And, I like to research about what other people in the world think about God and what they think about life. And it all comes down to the same kind of thing. He created us to enjoy our lives and to love our brothers and sisters. I don't care what your faith is. That's basically what the mandate is from Him. And we forget that. We forget that this is all a gift, and we forget to love our brothers and sisters. And doesn't matter what color you are, doesn't matter what creed or religion you are. If we're truly brothers and sisters, if we really are a family, shouldn't we be rooting for each other? Bad families don't root for each other. Great families who succeed root for each other and pull each other up when someone's fallen behind. And that's what you're supposed to do with everyone on the planet. And there's so much division on the planet right now. There's so much, I can't even keep my head straight as to what's going on with new issues every day on the planet. And everyone's fighting this person. Everyone hates this person. My gosh, it's exhausting. If everyone just stopped and realized how fortunate we are to actually just be alive, to be breathing, and to have love and everything else in our lives, wouldn't the world be a whole lot better of a place than it is right now? Because it's a mess. So for me, how can I clean up this mess? All I can do is my immediate periphery. I can be a great dad. I can be a great husband. I can be a great friend. I can make great movies to entertain people. That's my job, and that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I'm really enjoying the heck out of it at this point.
And when you're you're picking the movies now, you're writing the movies now. Will you ever be a bad guy again? Because I have to say, I did miss it. I watched
Oh,
Last Rodeo, but I was waiting
come
for you
on.
to turn. I was waiting for you to turn heel the whole time. I'm like,
Yeah,
come
that's
on,
right.
we need.
But that's the great thing about my career, is that at this point, no one knows when they go to the theater which Neil they're going to get. So, life is like a box of chocolates, right? So, whether
That's
I'm
right.
doing, there I was in Tennessee the other day, doing a commercial for the professional bull riding PBR. And there's me riding a horse as the ultimate John Wayne guy, jumping over rivers and riding all over the place and having just a great old time, because I love being on horses. And then the next day, I'm off on set being this horrible villain of a human being. And so, from TV to movies to theater to documentaries to cartoons and commercials, I want to do it all. And I don't want to be just one thing. Every movie needs a villain.
Do you have
I'm
a
really good at it.
you're
Every movie needs a hero. Now I get to do that too. Every TV show needs whatever. So from Tulsa King to everything else, I'm having the time of my life, Troy, and I can't tell you how much fun it is to be where I am at this point in my career, and my kids going off to college and doing well in athletics and school and theater and everything else. And I'm in a really interesting, wonderful spot in my life right now.
is there a role that's more fun for you? Like, do you obviously both are great, but do you have like, is it more fun when you're on set to be the bad guy, or is it more fun to be the hero?
It's It's the heroes. Okay, the villains are just fun. It's just, after we'll do a take of me being incredibly, evil, the whole crew just stops and we just laugh because it's just so absurd because I'm just not that guy. But I had to be that guy because I wouldn't kiss another woman on screen. So what am I going to do? Be the army guy in the middle of a battlefield where there's no women around, or I'm going to be the villain? And that's what I've done for the last 20 years. But there's something, but I can, at the end of the day, leave the villain at work and it's fine. The heroes, however, I can't slough off the characters. I just can't get rid of them. And, to this day, if I hear the word Band of Brothers, I immediately go back to the thought process I had of Buck Compton and the torture that he went through and the PTSD that he went through. And you never get rid of it. And for the last rodeo, Joe Wainwright was really Neal McDonough. So he went through some really hard times in his life 10 years ago. I went through some really hard times in my life 10 years ago. I felt like I died or should have died. And so did Joe Wainwright. And for him to come to the other end of all of his pain and turmoil 10 years later, for Neal McDonough to come through all the pain that he went through 10 years later and to be in a great spot, it's semi-autobiographical. So you can't just get rid of Joe Wainwright inside me, because I had to pull up all the real memories and emotions and all the things that make me me, and I infused it into Joe Wainwright. So you can't just get rid of it. Damien Dark, any of the characters that I played, or any of the evil characters, Tulsa King, Yellowstone, I forget those characters as soon as I check out at the end of the day, and I just giggle. But the heroes, they come home with me and they live with me forever, and it's awesome. But at times, it's really emotionally difficult at the same time.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Those are the right characters to bring home. Neal, did you ever have a fluctuation in your faith? I ask you because I have had a roller coaster ride in my spiritual journey. I have always been a Christian, accepting Jesus as my personal savior, but it took ALS to really snap me into shape.
Yeah, I mean, I think prior to that incident in my life, I think I was taking things with a bit of a cavalier approach. I think it was like, I'm an actor, I'm going to movie star, I can do whatever, I can do whatever I want. I wasn't so focused, and I was, a little overweight, or didn't take so seriously my relationship with anything. Even with God, I think I had forgotten a lot about why I was here. I was just kind of like a gun for hire. Remember Clint Eastwood when I did Flags of Our Fathers? He pulled me aside and he says, "You're lazy." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, you're just a gun for hire. You're so talented. Why aren't you writing and producing your own movies?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can't do that." And about 3 years after that is when my incident happened. And I go back to that conversation with Clint Eastwood a lot because it was something that stuck in the back of my brain, but I didn't really listen to it. And I think by me not having that foundational relationship with God and not really working so hard, everything was just kind of given to me. Everything was coming very easy for me. And I think all the gifts that I had, I took for granted a bit. And it took me being kicked to the curb to realize I was given a whole lot of great, amazing stuff. And I took a lot of it for granted. Maybe I took my everything for granted, my relationships with friends and family and this and that. I'm like, I'm just whatever. I'm just a movie star now. I don't need to really concentrate on anything else. Oops. And then the carpet just got pulled from under my feet. And after that had gone on, and I remembered later on, wait a second, Clint Eastwood called me out, didn't he? And it was just the same time that when the clouds started to part, that this thought process came into my head. And every year on New Year's, I'll jump into a body of water to start my new year off and think, okay, what am I going to do this year? What can I do? It's usually in ice cold water. And we were in Canada, and I asked God, what would you like me to do this year? And I'm not kidding you, Tim. I was in this ice cold pool, and it felt like a hot tub for a second. And I heard him say to me, I need you to make films that give glory to me. And I'm looking around, I'm like, did anyone else hear that? Or is that just me? Because that was really, I've never really had God speak to me before, that I could actually hear something. And I felt something in the pool. That plus Clint Eastwood's thought, plus the crucifixion that I had, all these things that happened. This was almost 10 years, 8, 9 years ago. Then all of a sudden something clicked, and I said, okay. And then the next day I got this offer for this film, this small little $350,000 budgeted film. And my agent passed on it because there was just no money on it. And the director called me and he said, I would like you to rethink this. And rethink what? This movie that we offered to you. I'm like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. And he sent me the script, and I read the script, and I said, I love this character, but I don't want to play the villain in the movie. I want to play the hero in the movie. And I want the hero to find his religious worth again halfway through. And the guy was a hitman. And the director was like, this is a great idea. So we did the film. Of course, I fired the agent. And now he's my writing partner. And that's where it began. And then we did part 2 to that called Boone, where my wife Reve went out and raised $1.5 million. And we did that. And again, it's about his faith in himself and his faith in God, but he's still a hitman. In both these films we sold, and they did very well. And we kept producing more films. And then we ran into Angel Studios. We did The Shift. We did Homestead. We did The Last Rodeo. We've done a few other films now that all have this component of a faith backdrop. Not so much faith-based films, but with a faith backdrop that every guy, because I can say every woman, but for me, when I write for me, it's every man has to go through something in their lives to see who they really are, what they stand for, what their worth is. And those are the films that I love writing to and building. And that's what we've been doing now for the last 10 years, that Reve and I, really the last 5, 6, 7 years, we've been really working hard on that. And it's because I lost my faith. It's because I got kicked to the curb and I got called out. And when you get called out by him, it can be sizable things. And right then and there, I realized God is my everything. And if I'm not making him happy, what the heck am I doing on this planet? If I'm not doing the right things for my kids, what am I doing here? If I'm not doing the right thing for my wife, what am I doing here? And we all make mistakes. We all trip up. We all do stupid stuff every single day that we regret. Everybody. But that's what makes us human. I'm sure Jesus wasn't happy when he tore that temple to shreds. But after he did it, I'm sure he realized what he did was the right thing. As painful, as emotional, as human as he was at that time, I think, to me, when you read the Bible, that's the most human moment. Well, the second most human moment, of course, on his crucifixion is obviously his most human moment. But that moment right there is how can you do this to a temple, a place of worship for my Father? I'm going to rip this place to shreds and show you what it's really about. That's what we're all supposed to do. We're all supposed to stand up to do the right things, no matter how painful and how hard it is at times, because we all make mistakes. We're all human. We're all flawed. And he's there to forgive us every single time. So for us, shouldn't we be there to forgive everyone else while we're here on this journey?
That's such a powerful perspective on faith and purpose. You grew up in Dorchester, a community touching the south side of Boston. Your mom and dad were off the boat from Ireland. Could I impose upon you to show some imitations of your dad? I heard that your friends had trouble understanding him at times and he was a riot.
Oh, Neil, when you go out to Hollywood, here's what you do. If they give you $1, give them $2 worth of effort. And that was he was such a stickler for, he came off the boat from Ireland, met my mom here, but as soon as he landed here, he walked straight into an army office and said, make me an American. This was 1947, after the war, after all the horrible things that had happened in Europe. There was nothing left there. So he and his brothers and his sisters all kind of went to Canada, went to England, most of them went to the United States. And when he came back after those years of overseas in Panama and Greenland and Stuttgart and all these other places that he had gone to, he came back the most proud American you could possibly imagine. And he instilled those American ideals so heavily into all of his kids. I think, because I was the baby and I was a mistake years later, I think he spent a little extra time infusing what is America and what it stands for. And then there's my mom with Norman Rockwell pictures that she would frame out of magazines and put them around the house. So it was the ultimate American experience growing up with an Irish flag in the background as well. So I was very proud to be both. And he instilled that, I came to America with $12 in my pocket. What are you going to do? And he did very well. He worked through politics. He bought a motel on the Cape. He had a real estate business, and he worked really hard to provide for his family, not just monetarily, but with pride, and pride of the family, pride of ownership, pride of building a family together with my mom. And they were married forever until, my mom passed away. And it was just kind of this idyllic upbringing, growing up in Dorchester, which is kind of a tough part of town. It was something that I loved, but I grew up really on the Cape. When I was 5 or 6 years old, we moved down to Cape Cod, and I spent most of my life on the Cape. And most of my brothers grew up in Boston. I grew up in Cape Cod. So there's a big difference between my brothers who all went to parochial school and got whooped by nuns, to me down in public schools on Cape Cod, where everything was just much more relaxed and chill. But I loved it. It was such a great childhood, and early on it was, my mom and dad would instill, they'd give me these little jobs around the motel. When I was 4 or 5 years old, my dad would give me a quarter to go pick up the cigarette butts, and I was probably 3 years old, cigarette butts in the parking lot. And then I would start showing rooms for people, and I was like 5 or 6 years old. And if you saw me, Tim, at 5, 6, 7 years old, this chubby little red-haired kid with freckles all over his face, with a lisp, showing rooms. Here, sir, this room is a beautiful room. It has a view of the lake and has HBO and all this. No guy was going to turn me down. I just knew how to sell, and it was, then working in the restaurants. Then finally, my parents bought a second motel, and of the 6 kids, who did they choose to be the manager of that second hotel? And it was me. And on day one, I fired 2 of my brothers. So, I did them a favor anyway. So it was, they gave me a lot of responsibility as a young man. And they were always, with that, immigrant mentality: work hard, great things happen. Work hard, great things happen. Do the right things, great things happen. Don't forget about God. Go to church. All those things that they instilled in me, Reve and I instill in our kids. And there's no way I would be here today without Reve. There's just no way. I always say I can go through life with one hand tied behind my back as long as the other hand is being held and led by Reve. And she helped me through the storm that I went through. She is now my manager and my production partner, and she runs the household. And with 5 kids, that's a lot. So she's tireless in what she does, and in her approach to excellence in everything that she does, and helping with scripts, helping with ideas, motivating me. Honey, I've got this idea for a film. Well, then write it down. Okay. Honey, I've got this idea for, well, why don't you dictate into your phone and send it off to Derek? Okay. And by her cracking the whip on me, has made me a very successful man in this business, because you're about to do our 10th production together as producers. We just sold a TV series. We have a first look deal with Angel Studios. We have all these amazing things because I have someone who not only supports me, but motivates me and says, you can do this. No one else can do what you do. There's only one Neal McDonough on this planet. Go be the best version of you that you can possibly be. So I went from a mom and dad who pushed me without, relentlessly. Believe in yourself. Great things will happen. And they handed the ball off to Reve, and Reve has been the exact same way with me, and I'm the exact same way with our kids, with Reve and I, through sports. And now we have a D1 golfer off in college. My daughter's going off next year to play volleyball. We've got another daughter who's, I know, going to be a movie star, and 2 others down the track who are also big athletes and great at school and just great kids. And that's comes from really being on it as parents, and when they see mom and dad loving each other as much as we do, it kind of rubs off on them, I think. And I'm sure it's the same with Troy. The way he sees you and Alyssa the same way, it's that you don't see that very often. You don't see mom and dad loving the snot out of each other, come thick or thin, pimples and all. And you guys have it, and we have it, and that's just a recipe for absolute success in life. And I'm so proud of it.
Neal, would you, first of all, yes, for sure. My wife and I we always say, like, try and compare what we're doing to what my parents did and all that good stuff.
Right.
So first of all, you're 100% right. Second of all, would you ever, your daughter that's interested in show business, would you ever write a movie or a show and have her do a small part in it? Or is it better to kind of stay out of the business as long as you can, I guess, in that world?
There isn't a movie that I've done so far that I produced that London, our daughter, hasn't been in, and she's different from the rest. London is, all our kids are gigantic. They're all, my son's 6'5", 2 daughters are 6'2" and 6'3". My youngest son's probably gonna be bigger than all of them. He just wants to wear number 87 at Syracuse University. He wants to be Gronkowski. I've stuffed it into his brain. You're playing for the Orange. Let's go. But our other daughter is, she's 5'5" and not the athletic one, although she's probably the most athletic kid in the family. But she just wants to be an actor, and her face is she's the most expressive, beautiful face. And she struggles at times because she's not like the rest of the McDonough kids. She's an artist, and it's hard being an artist at times because it's tough for people to understand your artistry. It's tough for people to understand who you are when you're not that identifiable thing. You're the quarterback, you're the point guard, you're the ace student. She's much more like, me to a certain extent, where she sees things through a different lens. And early on, she was offered to play opposite in the Steve Jobs movie. Michael Fassbender, who was the star of the film, she was offered at 5 years old to play his daughter. And the casting director said, she's got the part, but I want you to really think about this. If she becomes a movie star at 5 years old, she's not going to have a childhood. She's going to be it'll be very, very strange because kids who are young stars generally don't deal well with life. So we didn't let her do it. To this day, she still kicks me and reminds me daily, why didn't you let me do it? Because I didn't want her to lose her childhood. But now she's 15, and we're working really hard to put her in movies because that's where she should be. And it may have been a mistake by me not putting her in the film back then, but I didn't want to lose my Lundy to being one of those kids. But now it's her time, and I'm going to do everything in my ability to put her in movies and TV shows because that's where she belongs. And I love that kid to death, and I know she's going to do more movies than I ever will, and I'm very, very, very proud of her.
My money is on her. Protecting her from that life, in my opinion, was a blessing. Your dad was a passionate American. Did he fight in the Korean War?
No, he in 19 just after the war, he grew up in a horse ranch in the west of Ireland. And I remember hearing the stories that when he was near the end of the war, when there's no food left in town, there was nothing left in town, they slaughtered all their cattle and their horses and goats and everything and fed the town. And then they were penniless. And the dad was like, all right, you guys need to go and find your own lives. And he went over to America in 1947 and then was there. He never got to Korea, but he was certainly, I'm not sure if he spent any time in Korea at all. Can't ask him now since he's passed away. But I know he was in Panama and Greenland and Germany for almost 7 years. So I don't know if he had actually any time in Korea or not. I don't know. I don't think so, because I probably would have remembered that. But he was very quiet. He didn't talk too much about it or at all, really. He loved his time in the army. He loved his time supporting and fighting for America. But I miss that guy every single day. I can't even tell you how much I miss my dad. He was, if you ever like kind of designed a dad who is that big, tall, stoic, everything is possible type of man, that was Frank McDonough, and he is. I'm just so stinking proud to be his son. But my mom was kind of the catalyst to everything. She was the one who'd wake up at 4:30 in the morning to bring me to hockey practice all the time. She was the one who would, when I got cut from the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade plays, and there was two a year, and I never made anything more than a tree or a tooth. I always tell my kids I was the best tree you have ever seen. I stayed still for an hour. I didn't move. I was unbelievable. Such commitment to my character. But then when I was a freshman in high school, and this is one of the big things that changed my life too, when I was struggling in so much that I auditioned for Your Good Man Charlie Brown to play Snoopy in the play. And my mom at home, we had a piano, and she was a pretty good piano player. And we worked the numbers ourselves. And I went into the audition, and I auditioned for it, and I knew I did great. And for some reason, I had stupid confidence as a kid. I think growing up in the motel, showing rooms, working the restaurant, working the gas station, doing all the things, I was always confident in myself that I was something different. And I remember the director, John Sullivan, whom I owe a lot to, but taking a chance on this guy, said, wow, that was a heck of an audition. What's your name? I said, Neal McDonough. He goes, where are you from? I'm like, Hyannis, I'm from here. And he goes, why have I never seen you before? I'm like, exactly. I've never had a chance. No one's given me a shot. He goes, well, you're really talented. I'm like, well, thank you very much. And he goes, would you like to be Snoopy? I said, yes, I would. And my first night out, I got a standing ovation. And I knew I had finally arrived to something that I was really, really, I found this God-given talent. I was a really good athlete, but there was something about me being on stage and me entertaining people that I was really good at. And at a young age, my four older brothers, not so much my sister, but my four older brothers, when I was a really young kid, would, this is before there was Fortnite. This is before there were video games. This is before anything. Neal, entertain us. Go. And if I didn't entertain them, Tim, they would generally torture me. They would beat me, or they would throw things at me, or they'd do horrible things to me as a kid. So I learned at a young age how to entertain them quickly, how to get a laugh out of people, and how to turn the tears on really fast when they were pummeling me. Oh, Spike, don't do it. And they would find, oh, we're hurting them too much. Then they'd walk away. And I kind of giggle to myself, oh, that worked. Note to myself, remember that, how to do that. And all those tricks that I learned as a young kid, uh, I certainly tap into still to this day. And I thank my brothers all the time for giving me that very difficult acting training as a young man. And here I am today because of them. And I love every single one of them so much.
It might be difficult to remember because you're so young, but after getting cut from the first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth, why did you keep trying?
I'm stupid.
Yeah.
It's this. I just always knew deep in my gut that, I had brothers and sister who were valedictorians, who were the captains of the teams, who were great at everything. And I couldn't figure out what I was going to be great at, but I wanted to be great at something. But I wasn't sure what it was. But I had this real weird confidence in myself that everything was going to work out. And after, I remember Dickie Buck struck me out in the championship game in Little League. And there I was a stud ball player. I remember I was batting 638 on the season. I still remember. I remember jacking balls, and I was this great ball player. And I struck out with the bases loaded, down by 1 run, on a ball that I know was up and outside, and I know it was a ball to this day. And he called a strike, and I couldn't get over it. That was when I got into high school, and I was like, oh gosh, I felt like this tide of high school coming at me, a place where my brothers and my sister were so successful. My freshman year, I just crumbled, and I was like, oh, what am I going to do? I know there's something for me out there. I just can't figure out what it is. And then through Snoopy and through religious retreat, it got me back on track and made me realize that the things that I always wanted to be, I now have a chance to do it, but I got to work hard at it. I got to dig deep. I got to overcome fear. I got to overcome being chunky and freckly faced and then pimply faced. All these things you had to overcome when you're an adolescent. I said, okay, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to overcome these things. And I did. And it was through hard work and faith in myself, but more importantly, faith in him that he would get me through anything if I worked really hard at it. And I worked really hard at and I tell my kids, it's not about being great at one thing. It's being great at everything. It's about getting up every morning and saying, okay, how can I be great today? What can I do to improve on every level from yesterday? That might sound like impossible, but it's not. Every day, if you try to eat a little bit better, if you try to think a little bit better, if you try to do a little bit better every day you actually get better. And sometimes it takes a lot of no's, like I got through elementary school and grade school, and turning them into yeses. And that's what I finally did. And here I am now, all these years later, 59 years old, all those no's that I got along the way, there were a whole lot more no's than there were yeses. And everyone knows that to be successful in life and to take, why would some kid from Cape Cod, Massachusetts think that he can be in 150 movies, 1,000 hours of television, and entertain? What? Are you out of your mind? There is no way that's going to happen. You're going to stay on the Cape. You're going to be a landscaper. You're going to work jobs for the seasonal jobs that are left for you on Cape Cod, like most of my buddies back in the Cape. And that's what I was going to do. Well, no, I wanted something greater for my life. I knew there was something else out there. And here I am because God gave me a chance and I wasn't going to let him down. And now in the other part of my life, in the human side of my life, I don't want to let Reve down. I don't want to let the kids down. So there's a lot more pressure, good pressure, to keep me motivated. And nothing keeps you motivated and nails your feet under your work desk like having a great wife and amazing kids. And that's where I am. And I'm just so stinking blessed.
Hey, can you tell Troy why you've been spending so much time in Austin, Texas lately?
Because of PBR, I am now part owners of the Austin Gamblers rodeo team in Austin.
It's funny.
So I was supposed to be in. Yeah, I've got to get down to Austin very soon because the season's about to start up. But uh, I'm so proud to be, for Reve and I. Speaking for Reve and I, we didn't know a whole lot about the PBR 2 years ago when I started writing the film. Of course, you know about bull riding, you see it on television, but to really
Sure.
know about PBR, and the thing that I love so much about PBR is that every event starts with a prayer. The whole stadium, there's 18,000, 15,000, 25,000 people. You go to the finals like I did a couple weeks ago with Reve and the kids, right there in Jerry's World at Cowboy Stadium, and have tens of thousands of people stop and pray is just there's just something so incredible about it. And then throughout the night, one of the things I love so much about PBR is that you're always rooting for the rider. You're never not rooting for the rider. You want to see every rider get to 8 seconds. Where
Mm.
most events, you go to a sporting event,
Yeah,
half
it's
the
true.
people in the stadium hates the other half. They want the other half to get crushed and be beaten and destroyed. Well, that's not the case in rodeo. Everyone's rooting for every rider to get 8 seconds. There's this great joyous family environment that Sean Gleason and PBR have created. And when they asked me if I would want to be part of the PBR world and actually own one of the teams, Reve and I jumped at it. So we're very blessed to have that opportunity to be owner, to be a team owner, is just kind of something that everyone would always aspire to, and now it's
For
here, and
sure.
we've achieved that. It's just kind of like, wait a minute, what? And one of my goals in my life was always to own. I want to own a minor league baseball team for the Boston Red Sox. That's been one of my goals my whole life, and we're getting there. But I never saw this in a million years that would be part owners of a rodeo team, and it's just I couldn't be happier or more gassed about it because it's just it's a great group of people. JJ, who runs the team, is incredible, and the other owners on the team who don't like to be mentioned are just incredible, fantastic human beings, and I'm really fortunate to be in that world.
Is it a profitable team to own, or is it more of like the growth and the marketing aspect of it?
When the first teams, I think the first 6 teams, they sold for $5 million a team. No, I think it was even less than that. I think it was $3.5 million per team. Uh, and then they sold 2 more teams for around 25 million. And the
Wow.
last team I think sold for $40 million.
Holy smokes.
So to be in on one of the original teams and the original investments, uh, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a pretty good investment. But it's not, you don't do things just for investments. You do things because
Sure,
it's a lot of
sure.
fun and an
Yeah.
honor. And to be there in the dirt with the guys in the owner's pen right there at the corner of the dirt, cheering on all the guys. And I know everyone there. I know the riders. Not just the riders. I know the bullfighters. I know the guys on the horses. Jared, who does the horses, who wrangles the bulls when they're getting a little naughty in the ring with his lasso. These guys are just tough as nails, and
Sure.
I love hanging out with guys who are that way, who are tough as nails, but also believe wholeheartedly that Jesus is their savior. God is there for us. All these great things that built America. It is the ultimate American sport for me. And I love that Reve and I are part of it and part of the Austin Gamblers. Go Gamblers. Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
We have a son with 16 years between him and our oldest. His siblings complain that we spoil him. Did you get that kind of unfair treatment from your brothers?
My mother, she always said I was the greatest mistake she ever made. So yeah, I think that the baby always gets the little extra butter. I think that's the way it is. Even in our family, our son Jammer, he's the youngest, and he gets a little more attention, a little more leeway to things and such. More than the first ones because you're like, okay, you got to do this, you got to do this. And when it came to my parents, by the time it came to me, they'd seen everything like, well, do whatever you want. You want to be an actor? Great, go be a great one. You want to be a ball player? Go be a ball player. So they were a lot more lenient on me, which aggravated the heck out of my brothers, which is why they tortured me so much as a kid that it was. But they tortured me, but they also loved me at the same time. It was, they wanted to make sure that I was tough, that I wasn't this spoiled little baby in the family. And I remember my brother John, when I was, after my incident with when I struck out in baseball, and I was like, my life is over. I'm never going to play baseball again. I stink. I'm just not worthy of anything. He took me up to the park, and my brother John was maybe the best athlete in the family. He played, basketball at Boston College. He was just one of those great athletes. All the guys in my house were just athletes. He took me up to the park one day and started hitting ground balls at me at 100 miles an hour, just bouncing off my chest. You want to be a ball player, you got to toughen up. Just welts, all in tears and snot coming out of my eyes, and I wouldn't quit. And he goes, "You gonna quit now? You gonna quit now?" Bam, 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 bam. I'm just crushing me with baseballs. And finally I stormed off the field and started walking home. It was about a mile home, and there's my brother John, the whole way, a foot behind my head, whispering or screaming into my ear, "What kind of man do you think you are? You going to quit? You're going to quit everything? Is that what life is about? Just quitting? You're a loser. Is that what you want to be? You want to?" The whole way home, and I was like, "I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him." But I'm 12 and he's 22, and it was something that's never left me. It's Yeah. I had another guy in college who would scream out. I would play on when I wasn't pitching on my off days. I'd play first base, and this kid was a freshman, and McDonough, I want your job. And he was our other first baseman. And between that guy and my brother whispering in my ears, I always had this motivation of, I'm not letting that guy have my job, and I'm not going to let my brother down. I'm not going to let him beat me. I'm not going to let him be right that I'm not worthy of being a success in life. And I thank my brother John all the time because he was such a motivator for me. And I don't even, at the time he didn't realize it probably, or maybe he did. But he pulled out all the great things out of me that my dad wasn't so much go out and play baseball with me. My dad would be there and say, "Go out and play as hard as you can. Go and be the best version of you in everything that you do." But he wouldn't physically play.
Did you and I ever cross paths at Syracuse University? I know our times there overlapped.
Did you two ever run into each other at Syracuse?
No, no, I saw Tim a couple times, but Tim was Bo Jackson at Syracuse. He was, the athlete, the good-looking dude, the Rhodes Scholar, like all those things rolled into one. And when you'd see Tim walking across campus, and I wasn't on campus so much because I was a theater major, so my campus was a mile off campus. So I didn't have a whole lot of classes, actually on campus. So when I'd see Tim walk across campus, and there'd not just be like, it would never be just Tim. There'd be several people around him because it was this infectious thing that Tim had. Is I want to be like Tim Green. I want to work hard and be the best that I could be. And I could go. So when you see Tim Green walk across campus, you're like, okay, there's Elvis. There's the guy that we all want to be like. And when it came to sports, when it came to you know being in the theater department, I always wanted to be the best. I would work out. Most of the look when I went to Syracuse and I auditioned for. I told my kids a story the other day. They're like, "What?" So when I went into to audition for the theater department, I was the only guy in there that didn't have leotards on. Basically, everyone was in there singing and dancing and stretching and ballet. I'm like, I'm an athlete, and here I am in khakis and a blue polo shirt with Catcher in the Rye in my back pocket as I was reading. My sister was driving me. My sister also went to Syracuse. She was in the rowing team, and she brainwashed me earlier. You're going to Syracuse. I'm like, okay, great. And I remember seeing the campus as a young kid. I was like, wow, this is awesome. So I was always I had Syracuse stickers in my room. My high school yearbook pictures had me with Syracuse sweaters. Not even high school, but grade school. So I was always kind of brainwashed that it was going to be Syracuse. Uh, and oh, where was I going? I lost my train of thought because I was just thinking so much about Syracuse. Oh, when I went
Blue
into
khakis,
audition,
yeah.
so there's everyone, and there's 100 people, more than that, 100, and out around the doors or outside, and I'm like, I don't think I belong here. And they said, "Neal McDonough, you're up." I'm like, oh gosh, all right. And I go into the audition room, and there's 6 or 7 people sitting at a table just staring at me. I felt like it was, like, I don't know where I am. I don't know what's going on. And then all of a sudden, I just felt this confidence in myself. Said, "You're here because you're supposed to be here, dummy. So just tell them who you are." Like, "Who are you?" "I'm Neal McDonough from Hyannis, Massachusetts." And, "What do you do?" I'm a really good actor." They're, "Really? What have you prepared for us today?" And I didn't have anything prepared. And I said, "What I have," and I pulled Catcher of the Rye out of my back pocket. And I said, "When was the last time you've heard anything from Catcher in the Rye?" And they're like, uh, I'm not sure we've ever really read Catcher in the Rye. I'm like, and I read, and I kind of have a photographic memory because of having dyslexia. You have to read really slowly. But when you read so slowly, you remember where the periods are. You remember where the commas are. You remember kind of everything on this sheet. And I remember reading this really great scene just beforehand. And I read it again when I was driving. I'm like, well, this is a really great scene. And I read it, and by the end of reading the scene, looking up, but mostly looking at at the directors in the room, there were tears rolling down their face. And I was like, oh, I got him. I got this. This is good. And I kept in it. And I kept in the character. And so in the character. And I was finished. And I said, there it is. Thank you very much. And I walked out. And I knew they were like, what was that? And to me, I was like, what just happened in there? I felt like that was kind of awesome. And I walked away at the perfect time. And I didn't give him anything more. I just showed him enough to win. And I got in the car, and my sister says, how'd it go? I'm like, I have no idea. But I did it the way that I wanted to do it. And if they liked it, then I think I got a shot. If they didn't like it, I'm going to Bridgewater State, and I'm going to study something different. And as soon as I got home, that 5-hour drive, I got back home, and Syracuse had already called and they said, we want you to be in the theater department, and we'll give you a nice scholarship to come here. And I was like, what? And I knew by being the lesson that I learned is that by being different, and not just being different, but by being your unique self, by using the gifts that God actually gave you and not trying to be something else. I couldn't try to be a dancer. I couldn't try to be something else. I did musical theater in high school, and I sang songs, and I was really good at that stuff, but I was an entertainer more than anything else. And I could really entertain people. And I just stayed true to myself in that audition. And before you know it, I was starring in all the plays at Syracuse. And by the time I graduated, I knew I was on the right path because of the confidence that I had in myself and the confidence in knowing that God gave me this talent of being a great actor. I can't pound a nail. I'm terrible at telling jokes, but I'm really, really gifted at acting and making entertaining choices and making people kind of engrossed in what I do. And if it weren't for Syracuse, I don't know if I'd be here. And if it weren't for guys like Tim, guys would look up to and say, I want to be like that guy. I want to be successful like him because he's doing the right things. Or and I'd see Donnie McPherson, or I'd see other guys that or guys in the basketball team that I'd bump into, or on the baseball team. I knew that I was in the right environment, and I'm shocked at this point that none of my kids have gone to Syracuse yet. I know London will for theater, I'm sure, but I can't wait to get back to Syracuse because I miss that place. I've never been back since I graduated, and I can't wait to get back there with one of my kids. And a lot of it was because of seeing guys like you, Tim, who kind of led the charge of, you want to be great, then you got to work your butt off to be great. You want to be great, you can't do the stupid things that most kids do in college. You got to stay in the line, you got to work hard, and great things will happen. And by doing so, you get a career playing in Atlanta. You get to write books. You get to be a CBS broadcaster. You get to be all of those things because you were that guy. And by being that guy, let me tell you this, Tim, it rubbed off on a ton of other guys and girls at Syracuse University. And our hat is off to you because you led the charge for us. So thank you, brother. Thank you.
It's so funny. I mean, I say this on a lot of podcast episodes, but I never hear anything. My dad is like, he never tells any stories. He's so humble with it. I said if I completed half of what he did, twice the amount of people would know about it because I'd be telling everybody.
And it
And
wasn't your dad. Your
I
dad
don't
was
hear
the most.
anything.
Most guys would be walking across campus would have girls all over him and guys, or you're having cocktails or this and that. No, your dad was like, when you saw your dad walk across campus, or you saw him at the games, we go to all the games, you see him in this. We paid attention to Tim for sure because it's kind of what we all aspired to be. And his humility was something that was duly noted by everyone because he could have easily have been the other guy. He could have been the showy, look at me kind of guy and taking the shortcuts. Talking to his coaches, seeing him at the gym, seeing him at different times. Oh yeah, that's right. See him at the field house. Seeing him working out so
Manly.
hard, seeing him do. Yeah, exactly. For baseball, for training, our job was to run stadiums at Manly Fieldhouse, and you see all the football players and the basketball players and everyone else working out in the gym, and you'd see Tim in there. Who's the first one in? Who's the last one out? That was your dad. And it was those things that he, it feels like yesterday, Troy.
My favorite place to eat as an undergrad at Q's was at the Varsity. What was your favorite spot?
Oh, it's Varsity. McDonough, your wings are ready. McDonough, your wings are ready. Varsity was like, we used to, there's there's nothing else on the planet like going to have food at Varsity, especially before a game. It was just that was the spot, and you meet all your buddies there, or your fraternity buddies, or your teammates, or I would never. It's funny. I would never meet any of my acting classmates there because they were just doing different things. I'm pretty sure I was the only guy in the history of Syracuse University who was an acting major in Sigma Chi and also on the baseball team. I'm pretty sure I'm the only one. So I was very different from the beginning, but I was always really comfortable being just me. And I didn't really need to prove that I was anything different. So Varsity to me will always put a smile on my face. It's Archie's Pizza was another great spot, which isn't there anymore. Maggie's the spot where the Sigma Chi guys would always hang out all the time. But
Do you remember Cosmos? It's not there anymore, but
oh, I heard lately, Cosmos was always the late night spot to get a euro from there, gyro, whatever they wanted to call it.
yeah.
And you'd be burping up lamb until the early hours of the morning, But Cosmos was, I loved that place. There were so many little haunts that I'd go to that aren't there anymore, I'm sure. And I'm sure it has changed dramatically since I was at Syracuse, when I graduated in '88. That's a long time ago. So I can't wait to get back there one of these days. And uh, my excuse was Sigma Chi got kicked off campus, 20 years ago. And they invited me back in the theater department. We want you to come back and do a speech to the theater department. And I guess there's a big picture of me doing Shakespeare and As You Like It, in the kind of like this wing of the building that has pictures of me there. And I've never been back. They said, you got to come back. There's pictures of you in the theater department. There's like almost like a wing for you. I'm like, all right, I'll come back as soon as Sigma Chi is back on campus. Well, Sigma Chi's been back on campus for about 15 years now. So I have no excuse. I got to get back to Syracuse at some point and give back to all the great things that they've given to me. And the Syracuse campus out here in Los Angeles, I've done a lot of speeches for the kids there over the years, and it's great. But I got to get back to the original Syracuse and stop by Manny's and buy some stuff.
Neal, in the acting world, what was your first big break? Was it Band of Brothers? That is an all-time classic.
My first break was one of my first auditions. My cousin back home, Liam Monahan, said they're auditioning for Lou Gehrig. It was in the Cape Cod Times. It might be my first audition for Lou Gehrig in the Babe Ruth story on NBC. I'm like, okay. So I flew out to Los Angeles and I auditioned for it. And there were probably 100 guys in this open call audition. And guys would come down the stairs at Warner Brothers, they'd walk down the stairs and be showing the director how they swing. And I'm like, that guy can't play baseball. Another guy comes out, oh, that guy can't play baseball. And I was just going through, I'm like, these guys can't play baseball. So I went up to do the audition. And again, stupid confidence that I have. The lines that they gave you were like 2 lines of this scene, 2 lines of this scene. I'm like, that doesn't really, you can't really tell what an actor is like if I'm just doing 2 lines. So I went over his speech, Lou Gehrig's farewell speech at Yankee Stadium. And then I went in there and I said, when was the last time you guys heard the farewell speech at Yankee Stadium? And they said, well, I'm not sure if I've ever really heard it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to tell it to him. And it's like it was at Syracuse. I did the speech and they were like kind of dumbfounded and choked up a little bit about the speech because I really sold it as Lou Gehrig doing the last speech. And the director just looked at me and was like, wow, please, I'm praying that you play baseball. I'm like, yeah, I play baseball at Syracuse University. And he's like, Syracuse University? I went to Syracuse University. I'm like, you did? He goes, yeah, my name is Mark Tinker. And I'm like, you're Mark Tinker? And all of a sudden I got the part as Lou Gehrig in the Babe Ruth story. And I'd done a couple of movies at that point, after that, and I still just didn't like living in Los Angeles. I didn't like LA. I missed home so much because I was such a homebody. I loved, my mom and dad, my brothers, and everything. So I went home for a year after that, thinking maybe I'll just do local theater in Massachusetts, maybe. And then I went back out to LA, and I started working, and I started doing things. And a big break that I had was I flew the ship in Star Trek First Contact. And I thought that was going to catapult me, but it didn't really, and I just didn't. Nothing was really gelling. And finally, when I went back to Cape Cod, this is 7, 8 years later. I was like, that's it. I just don't like LA. I don't fit in there. It's just not. I'm that all American guy, and it just doesn't seem right out there. And then I went back to Cape Cod, decided I was going to be in the motel business. I was going to do local theater and all that kind of stuff, and I was content with it, with that choice. I was literally content, Tim, with that choice. And then I got a call for a friend of mine saying Steven Spielberg's looking for you for the show called Band of Brothers. I'm like, how does Steven Spielberg know who I am, and what's Band of Brothers? And I got the book and I read the book. Well, before I read the book, and they said, "When's the audition?" And they said they've been looking for you for weeks, and the audition's on Tuesday, and it was Sunday afternoon. I'm like, oh boy! So I got a one-way ticket, $693. I remember it like it was yesterday, and I flew out with the sole purpose: I'm going to get this thing, and I'm going to turn my career into something special. And I got out there and I auditioned for it. And as soon as I walked into the room, there's about 15 people in the room. And I didn't know who I was going to read with. And I said, who am I reading with? And I read the book that night. And I loved the book. And I loved this character, Buck Compton, that they wanted me to read for. And I went in there and I read for it. And while I was reading, I'm like, who do I read with? And Tom Hanks raises his hand. I'm like, the heck is Tom Hanks doing in this? What is this? And within 30 seconds, he just diffused any tension and made me feel confident and comfortable. And after the audition, he's like, you crushed it, don't you? I'm like, yeah, I do. And everyone started laughing. He goes, okay, stay tuned. We're going to have you come back again. And that stay tuned lasted for 3 months. And I slept on the floor of my buddy's, like literally the closet floor of my buddy's apartment in a sleeping bag, waiting for this audition to happen again. And it finally happened. And I went in and I crushed it again, and then I met Steven when he was Steven Spielberg, as he was walking around with a camcorder in all of our faces, and I think it was literally to see who had the nerves and who would fall apart. And I didn't fall apart. I just, again, the stupid confidence that God gave me, and I got the part. And the first person I called was my dad, and I said, "Dad, I got the part," because he knew how much it meant to me, and I get to play an American hero, and he was so touched and happy. And the first day I got to London, when I got the part, I met my wife, Reve. And it
Wow.
was one of those things, Tim, where everything in life just kind of hit. And I knew that something was seismically going to shift in my career, not just my career, but in my life. And my mom had passed away a couple years earlier. And I swear, Mom found someone just like herself who would motivate me and push me and be there with me along the way. And that was my wife, Reve. And here she is coming in with, honey, can you say hello to everybody quickly? No, she won't. With two of my favorite things, a cup of coffee and peanut butter and jam on toast, which is my go-to, as I'm talking about her on the computer. Come on, honey, you got to say hello. She won't do it. And that was everything changed at that point, from my life and my career and the love, and everything just changed at that point in my career, and I don't know where I would be without Reve because of that, and the gifts that she has given to me of strength and courage and being able to get through adversity that there's no way I could have gone through by myself. And she was the one, like I said earlier, who dragged me back to my faith and dragged me back to being who I wanted to be and who I always aspired to be, and maybe who I forgot a little bit about on the way, and pulled me back and slapped me back into position and said, okay, remember who you wanted to be? Let's go be that guy again. And here I am because of her.
Did you know, I guess, because Spielberg and Hanks and like, did you know Band of Brothers was going to be as big as it was?
Well, when they said it was, I think for 10 parts, it was going to be $125 million. All of us were like, I'm sorry, what was that again? They didn't tell us how much it was. And we knew something special was going to happen.
Yeah.
But that didn't motivate me. Whether it was going to be huge or not didn't motivate me. I'm motivated for every time you give me a job. Like I told you earlier, my dad said, if they give you $1, give them $2 worth of effort. That's just who I am. And I wanted to be the best I could possibly be. Now I had a second member of the audience. There wasn't just God that I was trying to impress and make proud of. There was this new girl in my life that I knew I was going to spend the rest of my life with, that I wanted to impress and make proud of. So I worked so hard. At that point, I was a straight up, true 100% method actor. So whatever my character was, I lived it 24/7. And after about 2 months of living Buck Compton 24/7, knowing that I was going to go through this PTSD moment, knowing that I was going to see my buddies get blown up in front of me, knowing that I was going to fall apart in the show. I lived with that, preparing for that 24/7. And after about 2 months of dating Reve, she's like, okay, I can't, I love Neal, but this other part of this torturous guy that you're living with, I don't love him so much. So unless you can figure out how to can leave your work at work and live your life, this isn't going to work. And there was about a 2 or 3 day stretch where I was all about, at first I was like, I'm a method actor. This is what I do. How dare you, you can't tell me this is exactly how you're supposed to do it. And after 2 or 3 days of being completely lonely, I remember my teacher, Arthur Storch, saying the key to being a method actor is always being in tap and living a full life and enjoying and feeling the sorrow, feeling the pain, feeling the happiness, feeling the goodness. But you have to go out and make those memories. You got to enjoy, but you got to make memories every day that you can draw upon as an actor. Because if you just draw upon the same two memories as a method actor, that's going to dry up. So you always got to keep on living a fantastic, wonderful existence. And I think I kind of forgot that. And when I realized how lonely I was after a couple days of not having Reve in my life, that I realized I had to quickly learn how to work and keep my work at work. But when I punch that clock, I'm done with that character for the day. And then I have to live my life. And now when I'm on set, I'm still 100% method actor. I love that I draw from who I am, but I can turn it on and off like a switch. Like, one of my writing partner director, he's directed me in a few films, laughs at me and does this impersonation of Neal McDonough. And it's goes something like this. Like I'll be on the phone, roll cameras. One second. Hey, honey. So how did he do? He went 2 for 3. That's awesome. He got a couple doubles. That's great. And hold on 1 second. Action. Bam, 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 and cut. All right. So what? How far did it go out of the ballpark? Was it a home run? Oh, that's awesome. So that's who I am. That I can flicking on and off. And not many people can do that because if you live as a method actor 24/7, you're probably going to go mental at some point. And, I've been there and I know what that mental side of it is. And there's a part of me that really enjoys it, but there's a part of me that says, okay, I got to take a break from it. And the best acting coach I ever had is my wife because she forced me into becoming a better actor by becoming a better man.
If only she could have seen you method act as that tree back in first, second grade.
Oh, dude, I rocked it, Troy. I was the best elm you've ever seen, and I was an elm. I didn't want to be anything else but an elm. I remember
Behind the
fourth grade.
curtain, no one could move you behind the curtain. You were
No
stuck.
one, you couldn't touch me. That's pretty funny. Oh, you got me laughing about a tree. Ezra brings me a cup with her letter on it, Reve.
There you go.
When did you know that anything was possible, if not probable, like having Clint Eastwood direct you and nailing a long monologue in one take? Also, tell us how your wife Ruve helped you prepare for that scene.
Oh, that scene was one of the most, yeah, I mean, so there's a scene where we had on a battleship for Flags of Our Fathers. And it was basically this 2-page monologue of me telling 600 guys, I'm looking at the 600 men all dressed in World War II fatigue. Then there's 200 people in the crew, camera people, rigging, all kinds of stuff. And then there's, there's 1,000 people I'm basically staring at out on this massive battleship. And it was ready for 2 days of filming. So for months beforehand, Reve would have my monologues taped to the bathroom mirror. Open up the refrigerator, it's on the milk jug. Taped to the couch, taped to the TV. She'd wake me up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Go. All right, gentlemen, here's what we're going to do today. We're going to go to, and I would do the monologue. So when it came time for me to be on the ship, I was so like revved up and ready to just crush this thing. So they had the 4 cameras way back there. And on the first take, I just rattled it off to perfection. And Clint just looked at me. And he turns around and says, all right, boys, move the sticks in. Move it in closer. Same thing. Bam, nailed it again. And now I'm really just feeling it. All right, boys, move it in closer. Move the sticks in again. And then I find him. So by lunch, we had done what was supposed to be for 2 days in a couple of hours because I was so prepared to crush it because of the hard work that my wife and I put into it. And they turned the battleship around and said, "All right, we're gonna have steaks and lobster tails when we get back, boys." And Clint never forgot that. He was so he loves when you're ready on rehearsal. He wants you to be so prepared. And then, it was always kind of in the back of my mind to crush it in everything that I do when it comes to being an actor, and a lot of that came from knowing and following Clint Eastwood's career so much that he was always ready on rehearsal. He would roll on rehearsal. And if you had one take, you'd be lucky. If you had two, if you had asked for an extra take, you'd see the rest of the crew go like, oh, because he demands excellence. He wants everyone to be prepared. So you go on some sets, there's the guy who's the boom guy between takes looking at his phone and doing stuff. Not on Clint sets and not on the sets that we have now either. If you're a boom guy, you're holding that boom, you're ready to go. If you're craft service, everything's prepared. If you're whatever the case is in Clint's production, you are always ready because we never went for more than 10 hours in a single day on his set. He was always so prepared. He knew his shot list. He knew what was going to go on. And I learned so much from reading so much about Clint Eastwood my whole life. Then to get a chance to work with him on Flags of Our Fathers, and then to follow his career thereafter. There's the similarity that we're going for, in that we have our company, the McDonough Company, and we have Angel Studios to put out our films. Clint Eastwood had Malpaso and Warner Brothers to put out their films. And it wasn't until his 50s that he really started to produce and write or direct and make films the way that he wanted to make them. And he never really worked for anybody else. And that's kind of where Reve and I are, that we're at the point now that the only films that we really want to do in the future are films that we produce, whether I write them or in the future direct them or star in them. We want a thumbprint in all of these productions. And that came from learning so much from Clint Eastwood. And, you know, I owe a lot to him, and he doesn't even realize how much I owe to him.
I think I thought that scene was some CGI. I didn't realize there was actually 1,000 people out there.
It was bonkers, and there I am looking at all the stars of the movie and all the other, and there's something that I think, again, I go back to my early childhood of having to entertain my brothers or else, that I learned how to entertain quickly and confidently and competently. And when it comes to being in front of Clint Eastwood or Steven Spielberg or I've worked with Steven now 5 times, that I have this, or now on Tulsa King, there I am working, against Sylvester Stallone, and I'm kind of fearless when you give me a script and a character, I can be anything that I want, and you can't judge me on it. Where in real life, I'm a little much, I'm kind of more of a lone wolf. I'm very happy being by myself or with Reve and the kids, which drives Reve crazy every once in a while. And she goes, "Can't you go hang out with one of your buddies?" And I don't really have like great pals, my brother Bob back home, or all my buddies that I grew up with. Those are my boys back home that I talk to on the phone a lot, but I don't see them very often. But moving to Los Angeles, and we moved around a lot as actors. As an actor, I've moving to Canada, moving to Los Angeles, moving around and doing stuff. So I have a hard time making great friends that I know will be my pals for life that I can talk to. But I've got my wife and my 5 kids that I love hanging out with, and I might annoy them sometimes. Like, "Hey guys, what do you want to do today?" Or they've got buddies and stuff too. So, uh, but when I play a character, I can be anything I feel like, and I have such bravery or bravado or whatever the case is. When you're working against someone like Stallone, who's very powerful, who's a guy's guy and tough as nails and says it like it is and loud, and that's who Sly is. I love going toe to toe against guys like that. It's like, you know, John McEnroe going against Bjorn Borg when I was a kid, watching those matches, watching, prize fighters when it's Ali versus Frazier. When you see these things and those athletes just get up for it. And that's my old hockey coach says, when you play with poop, you play like poop. He didn't use the word poop, but you know what I mean?
Another legend you worked with recently is Kevin Costner. You are the bad guy in season 2 of Yellowstone. Did you learn anything from Mr. Costner? What was that relationship like?
Well, Kevin and I, we did a film years ago called The Guardian. We shot at LSU down in Louisiana, and during lunch break, both of us played college baseball. So during lunch breaks, when everyone is having lunch, we'd be in the batting cages, just hitting balls and talking about life. And we had just this amazing time when we were filming, and it was something that was, we became friends during that, and it's something I will never forget because we talked about our own lives and our own ups and downs and all these kinds of other things. So when it came time to get to Yellowstone, it was kind of like going back to your fraternity. It was just this great feeling being back with Kevin again, and we loved working together on that. And he could see exactly where I was going. There was that Neal McDonough. Oh gosh, it's great hanging out with Neal. We're talking about life. But when that camera rolls, he knew his job and I knew my job. And my job was to intimidate the living heck out of anyone that I was going up against. That was my job. And Kevin saw what I was doing and would kind of giggle because he knew who I was in real life, and that I was the antithesis to my characters that I play is me. I'm not really that evil, very uber focused kind of guy in life. I pull those faces with my kids and they laugh at me. Dad, this isn't TV. So it was such a joy to play with Kevin again. And there are few actors on this planet who are as gifted as Kevin Costner. He listens so well on camera. He makes you feel so comfortable on set. And when it's playtime, he wants to play. And it's pound for pound. I don't know anyone who's better than Kevin Costner in the history of cinema. When it comes to acting on screen, he's really magnificent. He really is, and just a wonderful human being.
His character is so believable.
Oh yeah, yeah, so believable.
If I,
He is he.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. If I ever met him, I assume he is the same character in Yellowstone. That's what I think he is as a person.
He is to an extent. John Dutton is Kevin is John Dutton. John Dutton is Kevin, but Kevin is no, they're kind of exactly the same. He's that all American, everything is possible, don't mess with my family guy, which is kind of like me. And I think that's why we get along so well, because we have the same kind of ideals on life and how great America is. We're unabashedly proud to be Americans, and I think that's something that's kind of forgotten in this day and age where people moan so much about America. People get so upset about America. Well, I can't understand how. If you don't like your political leaders, if you don't like certain things, you can certainly control the area that you are in. And if you are an American, be proud to be an American. Do the best thing that you can be to promote America and the American ideals and the American ways. And I couldn't be prouder, and I couldn't be more happy to be where I am right now, especially doing these films that Reve and I produce that really are pro two things: pro America and pro God. And it's a fantastic thing.
You're also playing the bad guy in Tulsa King. Of course, you were playing opposite Sylvester Stallone. How was he to work with? I heard that you ruffled his feathers a bit.
I'm excellent, Tim, at ruffling feathers. In fact, the very first scene that we had, uh, there we are in my house. I'm throwing this, cocktail party for everyone, and of course, Stallone walks in with his henchmen into this really kind of well-to-do Tulsa environment, and I corner him, and we have a conversation. And during the way that it's written, the scene is definitely written pro Dwight Manfredi, Sylvester Stallone's character. But me as an actor, as the villain in the piece, I don't care. So halfway through the scene, I start impersonating Sylvester Stallone in the scene. I start talking like this, and I'm grabbing myself and doing all. And I see Sylvester just his veins are popping in his neck, and in everything. I can see him getting so irate and angry and pissed that who's this guy coming onto my set impersonating me? And the more he'd get upset, the more I'd drive into it. And the scene was just electric. And after the first take, Reve was in the video village in the back, and I walked back. I'm like, honey, how was that? That was great, wasn't it? She goes, no, you can't do that. He's going to fire you. You can't do Stallone in front of Stallone on your show. And all of a sudden, Stallone walks around the corner, and he's standing there like and I'm like, oh, I'm about to be fired. And he looks at me and he gives me this huge smile and he grabs me like this bear hug. He says, "Welcome to the show, Neal. This is going to be an awesome season." And from then on in, I was like, all right, what I did was stupidly confident, but stupidly awesome, and it worked. And here I am about to start my third season with Stallone on Tulsa King. So be brave in your choices in life. Be brave in your confidence. Know that God has your back and that everything is possible and great things will happen. And that's where I am. And it's a lot of fun to be in this position.
I got to go watch that scene. I got to go back and look at it
So
again,
good.
knowing the
Ooh.
backstory.
And then I remember I said, are you going to cover Stallone first? And I said, yeah. Okay, great. Why? I'm like, no, that's okay. Because I
Yeah.
wanted his reaction on camera first, not my reaction. I wanted his reaction on camera first. A little trick that I always like to do. That when you're the villain goes second because you want the reaction out of them first, and then you can tone up or tone down your performance when the camera's on you. But I want the reaction to be their reaction first and to be organic. And I learned that doing when I did Justified. That if you're going to be a villain goes second. Let the hero go first because then you can really mess with them and say anything you want off camera because it's not on you. And it's I can get pretty dark and scary at times when I do it, which is a lot of fun.
So you and I, when we were coordinating getting you on the show, on the podcast here with us, I told you my wife and I just finished watching Justified, and I had you on speaker, and she was walking through, and she's like, made a face. She's like, "Oh my gosh."
It's Robert Quarles. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Now you're doing what every actor dreams of, making movies that you want to see. And because it's you, you're making family movies the way that Disney used to make them.
Yeah, it is such a kind of it's amazing that we're at the point of our careers, Reve and I, that we get to make movies that the whole family can go and see. Like Troy said, though, I kind of want to make sure that I'm doing a little bit of everything because I have a lot of fans who like to see me as the bad guy, a lot of fans who like to see me as the good guy. So I like to do both, but I still like to be able to do it where the family can see it. And luckily with Angel, they've allowed me to play villains, middle of the ground, and then good guys. 3 different films. So we have a new one called The Wicked and the Righteous, this Western that I wrote that's Cain and Abel in the West that will start as soon as we finish Tulsa King in January. And I've had but Tim, you're right. How fortunate I am to be. This is what every actor, storyteller aspires to be. That someone who can actually write and tell stories, produce them, and star in them. That doesn't really happen very often. And now that I've done it several times, it's just I can't go backwards now. I can't. It's hard to be a gun for hire, like Clint called me years ago, because it just doesn't have the same thing in it. It's not when you want to play for your team, when you want to captain a team, it's one thing. But when you're not the captain of a team and you're just hired to be you have a great slap shot, so you're on the hockey team, but you're not the captain of the team. It doesn't feel the same. When you're steering the boat, when you're the guy or you're the leader of the team, and you're all that stuff, it just there's that responsibility that's thrown on your lap. Some people like that responsibility. Some people don't. I really like that responsibility because I know that the films that we're doing, we're hiring, there's 100, 200 people that we'll be hiring, giving jobs to. That's an amazing thing just in itself, that we're giving money to people to do things that they love doing. What an awesome feeling that is. But then to do things that I know are going to give glory to him and allow families to go to the movie theaters and sit together and watch our movies and not have to worry about covering eyes or ears, that 11-year-old boy and a 75-year-old grandfather can all sit in the same theater and take from it and feel better about themselves when they walk out of the theater at the end. What's better than that? So we're in this really kind of this enviable position that we get to produce our own content, and the content that we make can have edge to it, like I said, but it really talks about the core values of what America is, and that's family and God. And we're so blessed to be in this position now. And I hope we get to do it for a very, very long, long time. And then hopefully our kids will do the same thing now that our oldest daughter is going off to Emerson to study filmmaking and volleyball there. She's gonna be a director, and our oldest son Morgan, he wants to be an actor. London for sure is going to be an actress because that's just in her blood. The other two, they're too young to know exactly what they want, but when they say we want to be like mom and dad and be in the same business you're in, that's a pretty cool tip of the hat to the parents that they love seeing what Reve and I are doing, and how much we do it together, and how much we love each other. And that doesn't happen very often, and I know that, and I'm so blessed and fortunate because of it. That's why I go to church all the time. Say thank you.
You've got to look at my most recent middle grade novel. It hit #1 on the New York Times list, and it's your kind of story.
Oh, I can't wait to read that.
I'll
Troy,
send
what
it
is it
to
called?
you. It's called Final Season.
Oh, yeah. I saw that.
Yeah,
I'm gonna read that this
it's
weekend.
the Easter egg, Neal, is that it's all of our middle names. So the main character's Ben. My younger brother's middle name is Benjamin. And then his dad, John, Timothy John Green, was an NFL player who got diagnosed with ALS while Ben was playing football. The mom doesn't want him to play anymore. And one of his older brothers doesn't want him to play. Rich, middle name is Richard. And one of his older brothers does want him to play. Ray, my older brother's middle name is Raymond. And like the conversations that we had, like to the point where pounding the fist on the table, silverware rattling, my dad writes in the speech starting to slur that happens with, ALS. Yeah, it's intense. It's good. I
This
say
is
to,
this.
go
I
ahead.
mean, I think this sounds like a movie.
I think that's what my dad used to put you on the spot here.
Oh gosh, I'll read that this weekend. This sounds. Obviously it's about you guys. So it's going to be that much more personal when I read it because knowing who your dad is and what he stands for, and getting to know you, Troy, over the last year, how close you guys are. That when you see families like you guys, when you have to overcome certain obstacles in life and show how much you truly love each other, and that life is all about loving family. The final season seems to be that kind of book, so I can't wait to read it. I can't wait. This
You'll,
seems like something that I would love.
I think you really will like it. And the story is basically I say to people that,
But I can't. But I can't play Tim because he's too stinking handsome. I mean, how much I can't pull that off. The hair, the swagger, I can't do it.
I say to people that it's like the most fictitious thing in the book is it's my dad's ALS journey of like maybe 4 years compressed into like a football season, which some people it really happens that fast. So it's not an unrealistic thing, but luckily my dad had more of a slow progressing version. But it's really good.
Oh, I can't wait to read it. I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to this.
I love Dad putting Neal on the spot. That's great.
Smart man, Tim. Smart
Yeah.
man. We'll get Nick right in the screenplay, and here we go. We're off to the
Yeah,
races.
that's right.
I like to give guests the opportunity to brag about their families. I know that you are very devoted to your wife, and I've got to believe you are like me, and your kids are your magnum opus. By the way, how did you meet your wife?
Uh, Part A, yes, the kids are everything. I mean, I coach. It's funny if I'm not working, and I'm a pain in the butt when I'm on location because I'm like, can I fly home now? Can I fly home now? Can I fly home now? And I've done things like last week, a couple weeks ago, I flew home for a couple of hours for my daughter's birthday, and then flew back to Atlanta because I had to be there. Or I coach all their teams, so from all the kids, from coaching them in sports to coaching my daughter in dancing or acting lessons, I always want to be there with the kids because I want to give them all the great information that I've absorbed in my life and help them be the best version of their lives that they can possibly be. They have to do it themselves, but if you can kind of teach them and be there with them, you can tell them things and it goes in one ear and out the other. But if you show them things and actually walk the walk, then you're really helping your kids, and building the next generation of McDonoughs and next generation of Greens, right? So that's what Reve and I are. And Reve is on the board of everything at the schools while she's running my career, while she's producing movies with me and acting in movies. So we're very, very busy. But I met Reve the first night I got into town on St. Patrick's Day 2000 in London. And we walked into this bar. I was with the guys, this nightclub. And for some reason, she was on the door that night. She was running PR for a bunch of clubs at 21 years old. Uh, and I walked and I saw her and I just kind of lost my mind immediately. There was this girl in this long black leather coat and these black boots and 6'3". And I'd never seen anything like that before. And then I walked up to her and I couldn't, and I'm pretty good at speaking. I couldn't think of anything to say. And the only thing that popped out of my mouth was, gee, you're tall. I mean, it couldn't be the worst pickup line of all time. And then she says, and I started to walk away. I'm like, oh, that was terrible. I started to turn away and she goes, and you're American. And I turned back and I said, yes, I am. And then we just started talking. And the next morning I was off for boot camp for 2 weeks for Band of Brothers. And the whole time, all I could talk about was this girl. And I was driving the guys nuts. I said, I'm going to marry this girl. I'm like, dude, you've known her for 6 minutes. What are you talking about? I'm like, I know I'm going to spend the rest of my life with this girl. And they thought I was nuts. And then the first night we got back, we had a party for all the guys. I went to this restaurant and I said, please find this girl and make sure she's there that night because I need to see her again. And she showed up. Reve showed up, and we spent about 5 minutes with each other. And then I said, there's something I have to do. And I started to walk out. And Jimmy Matteo, who was one of my best friends of Band of Brothers, goes, where are you going? I'm like, something I can do. And he goes, that's the girl you drove us nuts for 2 weeks talking about her and you're leaving her? I'm like, there's something I got to do, Jimmy. And I walked home to my flat in London, called the girl that I was dating at the time and said, I got bad news for you. I'm getting married. And she's like, but what do you mean you're getting married? How long have you been cheating on me for? I'm like, well, I really haven't. I've known this girl for maybe 10 minutes, but I know I'm going to spend the rest of my life with her. And she was like, okay. And that was it. And then the next day, I called her the next morning. I said, you want to have some pizza tonight? And we went out and had a date and had pizza. And we've been together every day ever since. And careful what you wish for in life. I was wishing for someone to get me through life and be a partner in life and start having a family. And it happened. And I was 33 years old at the time. So I was much older. I'm 12 years older than Reve. And I never thought it was going to happen. I never thought my career was going to be where it was. And all these things that I never thought was going to happen. And then God said, all right, it's your time now. Now, here you go. Here's the ball. Go run with it for me. And I've been running with it for the last 25 years as hard as I can. And I'm here now. So I couldn't be happier or prouder.
Now on to our final word segment, where we ask our guests a few rapid fire questions. What was the happiest moment in your life?
The day that I saw Reve.
What is the biggest adversity you've faced?
Reading was a really difficult one as a kid. I just thought I was so dumb until I was at Syracuse and I realized that I had dyslexia. I was always in the special needs classes. The kids were always making fun of me because it was just I couldn't figure out. So to overcome that and to be where I am today, and to have a lisp and a stutter as a kid and all these things, to be known as the guy with the voice and all the commercials that I've done because of my voice, it's really kind of funny. So overcome that adversity was a pretty big one.
What are you most excited about?
Oh, my kids. Yeah, for sure. To see where they go, to see what they do, and not just the future, like today, how they're going to grapple with, you know, with what's up against them and what's going on in the world and how hard things can be in the future. But to have faith in yourself and confidence that God gave you all these gifts and that you have all these things. What are you going to do with them? And I can't wait to see in 10 years from now where my kids are. I have a feeling where Reve and I will be, but we'll be there next to the Greens and Skinny Atlas. But I know, but wondering where my kids will be is something that I'm so excited for the future.
What advice would you give your high school self?
You're different. Embrace it and go after it. Have no fear. Don't worry what other people think. Don't try to be anything but yourself. When you finally figure out who you are, keep being that guy, and great things will happen because he's got your back. What? I'm 16 years old. What do you mean I'm going to be this? What do you mean? So if I had someone tell me those things, I'd probably think if someone told me at 16 years old, you're going to have the career that I've had, I would have thought you're absolutely out of your mind. I don't think that could happen. But here I am because I did believe in myself, and I had someone who truly believed in me, and that was my mom, and my dad as well, but my mom really believed in me. And then when she passed away, I kind of was like a rudder, kind of lost out there for a while. And then when Reve came into my life, I got back on course, and here I am today. So have faith in yourself more than anything else, because if you have faith in yourself and believe in your unique self, everyone out there who's listening, we're all unique, but we don't have the faith or belief in ourselves to allow ourselves to just be our unique selves, that we're different. It's okay to be different. It's good to be different. Don't be different for the sake of being different. Be different because that's who you are. Be yourself. Great things will happen.
What book recommendations do you have for us or for the listeners?
The Fountainhead changed my life a little bit. It called me out on being a man. when it talks about uh, Ayn Rand when she devised it, Howard Rourke and all these characters that she built, obviously built, on Frank Lloyd Wright and his building and his architecture and what he believed in. But it was all about him believing in himself. When I think it was Peter Keating asked him to build buildings for him, he goes, "I'll do it for you, but you can't put my name on it because I don't want to have anything to do with this garbage. If I'm going to build something, I'm going to build it my way. And it's going to be different, but it's going to be my way, from the chairs to the roof to the everything. I want to design things my way because I believe my way is right and unique." And it called me out as an artist to stop trying to be Paul Newman, to stop trying to be Johnny Depp, to stop being. Once I became just my unique me, all of a sudden everything started to really open up. And it was when I read The Fountainhead that it really kind of changed my thoughts.
The name of our podcast is Nothing Left Unsaid. Do you have anything you want to say?
Thank you, God. Thank you for giving me the life that you've given me, the ups, the downs, everything that has made me who I am at 59 years old. I wouldn't trade a single bit of it. And, my kids have asked, what would you give to be 23 years old again? I said, nothing. Because if I were 23 years old, I wouldn't see you at this age. I wouldn't see you growing. I wouldn't see you guys succeeding at certain things in life. And there's nothing that makes me prouder or Reve prouder than to watch our kids succeed at something that whatever they're trying, and to not give up and have faith in yourselves. So, yeah, I'm at a spot where I'm so proud of my kids that it's hard to put into words.
At the end of every podcast episode, we ask every guest, who are a couple of people that you know personally that you think we should try to get on the podcast?
I think Tim would have a heck of a time with Kevin Costner for sure. I had an awesome conversation. He was the keynote speaker. I was the host at our high school. Our high school in here, Oaks Christian, is a pretty amazing high school. And the keynote speakers they have are just unbelievable. But I got to spend an evening sitting next to and talking to President George Bush, and what an amazingly intelligent human being he was. He puts things in such simple perspective, and his brain is so sharp that he's always been someone. Yeah, I threw at the first pitch at a Rangers game a few weeks ago, and I remember reading the story, and I talked to him about it. So when you threw out that first pitch at Yankee Stadium after 9/11, I heard that you were down in the tunnel for a while. And he goes, "Yeah, I was down in the tunnel for a good half hour." He played baseball at Yale, and he was a good ball player. But he said, "There's no way I wasn't going to throw a strike for America." And that was just such an indelible thing when I read that years ago. And I talked to him about it, and he goes, "Yeah, that's what it was." And then after, it wasn't 2 weeks later that I was there at Ranger Stadium, and there I was down in the tunnel throwing balls with my son Morgan, getting ready for it. And I got up on that mound, and I zipped a beautiful fastball right down the chute. I was like, "That's for America," and it was because of George Bush. So to have someone like George Bush on your show, I think would be really a treat for everyone to see who George Bush, because people think of George Bush as one way. After spending an evening with him, George Bush is not the George Bush that everyone knows. That's one of the most decent human beings I've ever met in my life.
Wow, that's a good one. Two good ones.
And Morgan McDonough, my son.
Yeah.
He's a pretty awesome kid.
Neal McDonough, you're a movie star with a heart the size of Dallas. We applaud your gigantic success, and we thank you not only for joining us today, but for what you're doing for this great country. May God continue to bless you and your family, and I hope to see you in person soon.
Tim, it's interesting in life where I generally don't like to really meet the guys that I've looked up to in my life. And I've met a couple of guys that I've looked up to in my life, and they've let me down. So I generally don't like to even talk to them, because I like to have that imaginary thing of, that's my hero, Carl Yastrzemski when I was a kid. I would never want to meet Carl Yastrzemski, although I'm dying to, because, he, in my family, it was the name of the Father, the Son, and Carl Yastrzemski growing up. But I never wanted to meet him because I never wanted to have him let me down. I've met other guys who have. But Tim, you were one of those guys that I looked up to so much when I was at Syracuse. And it was that, almost like that unattainable guy of Tim Green, that I always aspired to be a guy like you, but I never really wanted to meet my heroes because they always let me down. I sure as heck. But I'm glad that I got to meet you, because You didn't. All the things that you've gone through and all the things that are heard before your condition, the kind of man that you are, the kind of man you've always been, the kind of family guy that you are by putting family first, you second, God first, you second, team first, you second. All the things that you said that you were all those years ago and kept being and always have been and continue to be. And to sit here with you and do a podcast with you and your amazing son, Troy, this is one of those moments that I'll never forget because my hero's an awesome dude.
Thanks so much, Neal. I really appreciate the time today, and I know you're really busy, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you in person up in Syracuse.
I didn't see this coming, but it's awesome. You're awesome too.